Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending from where you are joining us. My name is Tony Zernoon, and we're glad to be here with a great panel talking about the cybersecurity workforce of the future and rethinking our hiring practices. Before we started, I wanted to share a little bit about Tortora Brayda Institute, where I've had the pleasure of working with and being a founding member and part of the board. The main premise is to try to optimize cybersecurity practices through collaboration and partnerships, where we have a think tank addressing many of the different topics. This particular topic is part of a task force which is focused on helping bridge the gap for the skills and talent gap, which it's actually increasing. So ergo, here we are with a great panelist that are accompanying me to rethink how we do our hiring practices. With that said, I wanted to introduce my panelists. Brian McCarthy, please go ahead, and then we'll go around the table.
Sure. Brian McCarthy, I'm the president and founder of 327 Solutions, a global cybersecurity risk management and governance training, credentialing, and custom development learning firm. I'm also one of the founding members of Veritas GRC, which does board, accountable executive, and committee subcommittee education under SEC, EU NIS2, and DORA cyber regulatory oversights. My whole background is threaded together about 30 years throughout training and development, human capital performance. A lot of that is in information technology, also into the clean manufacturing, healthcare, pharmaceutical spaces. Most recently, last 15 years, strictly cybersecurity.
Awesome, Brian. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank
James Purcell. I think you're mute.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. As he mentioned, my name is James Purcell. I am the president of Focus Partners. We are the largest recruiting agency specializing in cybersecurity today. We have offices throughout the US and in EMEA. Some of our clients are Palo Alto, Splunk, Cisco, Elastic, Fortinet, Arctic Wolf, Trellix, Varonis, Curonix, ReliaQuest, Cybereason, Delinea, et cetera. We work with most of the larger cybersecurity companies in the world, as well as many, many startups, over 150 companies in total. I've been doing this for 17 years and have a pretty good beat on recruitment space.
We appreciate you being here. Habiba Dayham, please.
Yes. Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Habiba Dayham. I serve as head of customer success for Armor Code. It's an application security posture management, coming from the background of being an engineer by training, years of product development for Cisco. And then after that, switched to IT, been experiencing managing portfolio for cybersecurity of multiple IT of multiple organizations, and then after that, been with Imperva, Qualys, and Horizon 3, a few of them as a head of customer success. So this topic is very, it's professionally important to me, but also personally, I think it's very near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about bringing diversity and inclusion to this field. I'm looking forward to the discussion, learning from my fellow panelists.
Thank you so much, Habiba. Jawahar, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. I've been in the industry, the tech industry, for 25 plus years now. Currently, I'm focused on operating advisor, operating partner roles with private equity as well as other investment vehicles. A lot of engagements on the M&A side, as you probably follow in, especially the security market is going through a lot of consolidation as it has been the last couple of years. And I'm also very much engaged with the early stage ecosystem, startup ecosystem, where I've personally invested and I've partnered a couple of co-investments with folks in this panel and in a couple of those investments. And I continue to advise those startups scale from zero to their next stage. But I've been in the industry for 25 years. I've had product leadership roles, go-to-market leadership roles, corporate leadership roles, and this topic is near and dear to my heart in terms of growing up the career, moving functions within the industry. And I also have a daughter that's finishing college, and she is doing a minor in information security. So
Awesome.
it is really, really close to me.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. And Jimmy Sanders, how are you, sir?
Hey, great to talk with you again, Tony, and everyone on the panel. I'm Jimmy Sanders. I'm on the board of directors for Information Systems Security Association, or ISSA. I'm also the president for the San Francisco chapter of ISSA, as well as being on the boards of several of the advisory boards of several of the colleges in the San Francisco Bay Area, like Ohlone College and Merritt, and being associated and alumni from San Jose State. So I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work with the Bay Area colleges for the last 8 years. And hopefully as a team and as a panel, we can work to come up with some amazing ideas to get more excited people into the security and technology workforce.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know it's in the middle of the week. Everybody's doing a million things to do, but I think this topic was very dear to all of us. And it's not by accident that you're all here. I think we all have interacted over the years in, as of late as well. And we share that passion. And I think that having come out of the RSA, I'm sure we all have anecdotals to share. I think collectively we have many years of being in cybersecurity. Many of us have been on the workforce side here, and then we've shifted into the vendor side as a hiring manager, but also we've seen this transition. What I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of share some background for our audience, right? And then we'll delve into some of the topics that we wanted to explore. There is a staggering global shortage, somewhere between 3.5 million, when you look at data from like Cybersecurity Ventures, and a 4 million, which is the latest numbers I've seen, according to World Economic Forum, right? So we're not reducing it. It's actually, to me, seems like almost increasing somewhere in that's a huge number. This goes beyond the technical expertise, right? There is a growing need for soft skills in cybersecurity, right? Be it effective communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and depending which roles they are, like in your space, Habib, I think EQ is a big thing. You're dealing with customers, right? So most people come because they have high EQs. These are all crucial for a successful incident response, threat analysis, and all the different gamut of cybersecurity, right? In a space that's heavily populated, I think we also have a vendor fatigue problem there, probably a topic for another roundtable. But that's initially. Things are shifting. Cloud adoption is soaring, right? It used to be IT security, the roles were more defined. You were a network, you were an endpoint, you were working with the infrastructure team. When you go to the cloud, things are meshing a lot, right? Or go to DevOps, the DevSecOps. You almost like a SaaS stitching stuff together, right? You have multiple different domains. So it does require more specialized knowledge. And many people lack the personnel. And because it has that additional requirement, as you go into like DevSecOps or SecDevOps, depending how you look at it, the personalities are very, very strong when they come in, right? So they come in, they do their thing, and then say, yep, I don't like it, I'm going to go away, right? So there's a lot of churn that happens that way. AI security and co-pilots. I think those of us with RSA, I think 90% of the people or vendors over there, they had some sort of a flair of AI. If you didn't have AI, almost it didn't matter, right? Well, there is an aspect of AI and cyber, which is one of the other specific topics that Tortora Brayda has been focusing on. We have created an ISAL, right, which we were trying to get in the middle of that intersection, whether you're using AI for cybersecurity, where explainability becomes huge, hugely important, or if you were doing, security for AI or governance for AI, right? But also we'll see the adoption of AI quite a bit, right? I was just sharing with the team earlier. There is a very interesting article that came out at Wall Street Journal that talks about the AI bots battling each other, right? AIs that are, creating your resumes in minutes, finding jobs for you in minutes, and submitting them. And then AIs on the other side, they have to go and siphon through this, right? So it's creating a huge mess on top of what we already had. And then also, if you think about the workforce that is adopting AI and co-pilots, managing those is going to be different. Like you almost have this iRobot person sitting next to you, and how do you deal with that, right? If you keep relying on that, are you growing? If you bring them in, are you investing in your team? And if not, how do you deal with that, right? So there's challenges around it. And certainly it's not for lack of broadcasting the cybersecurity gaps. Everybody has heard it multiple times. And unfortunately, it hasn't done enough to increase the cyber workforce, right? That 66% of cyber professionals share that working as a cyber professional has gotten harder in the last 2 years, while 27% alluded to the high level of difficulty from information. This actually came in from ISSA, Jimmy. You're in the thick of it, and we've been having these conversations. So I just wanted to keep it there, just give a little bit of background. We can, dive a little bit more as to what is the skill shortage coming in from, and what are some of the root causes. But let me just open it up. Jimmy, what are your thoughts about this space that we are in? Let's start with you. I mean, you are in an organization that where the cybersecurity professionals go. We all attended, and we all trying to help each other. Beyond that, you've been very, a big advocate of recruiting to the cybersecurity for minority. We all work with Cybersecurity and many other organizations. But what is your take? Where are we? Are we getting anywhere closer? Is it time for us to rethink these hiring practices?
I don't think it's time to think. I think it's more of in terms of a marriage, where one person in the marriage thinks that they're giving 80%, and the other person in the marriage thinks they're giving 80%, when they really may be both giving 20%. Because over my years as mentoring different people and mentoring different groups, one of the things that you see is you have the initial of excitement to be a mentee, and you see them with the drive and the excitement. But if you really don't love what you're doing, it starts to peter out. And so you also see that in people's arc of the security career, where they initially get into security because they thought it was going to be amazing, they thought it was going to make a lot of money, and then once they make the first 100,000, they peter out and they say that's good enough. And the same thing from the job market, from the job hiring market side. So where you start with all these companies with all these great initiatives, DEI initiatives, they make all this big splash on the media news, and 2 years later, that plan fizzles out, because once again, you start off with all this momentum. What it needs is two people coming to the table, understanding it's going to be a long grind about bringing the groups together and going for the small wins instead of the big media coverage. And to me, that is the way you win, is by bringing things like this together, slowly doing it, instead of saying, oh, I made 20% of the workforce, or maybe 200 people get better jobs. Start with just getting 5 people new jobs around you and work from there.
Thank you so much. So basically, there's a discrepancy of expectations and lack of alignment. And I think what you're saying is, hey, great that we have this big, strategic idea and this big KPIs I want to hit, but we need to move tactically, right? Anything to do that. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, having seen this for about 3 decades, I remember the old days of paper resumes, kind of fast forwarding out of that point of reading through things. Online things like monster.com, of course, we have Indeed aggregators and other systems like that now. But moving along little by little, as people tend to go out and look for talent within the cybersecurity markets, one of the things that we see is that there's this high level of competition for, I think it's one of the industry key terms, like the purple squirrel or the unicorn, per se. You want to hire. I mean, if I'm a recruiter, I want to go out and find the absolute best candidate for that particular job. Rolling somebody up into an interviewing capacity, everyone's looking for like 95% match, where I think organizations have to understand that we have to identify skills, kind of matrix that out in a competency model. And if somebody's at like 82, 85% proficiency, they're still a great hire, but let's coach the little teeny skills that can kind of help accelerate them to get to peak performance in the shortest amount of time. That's one of the directions that's happening right now. But what's held us back is a system that tends to run very, very quick. There's not a lot of innovation within, posting a resume, writing a CV. The interviewing process in progressive organizations is much, much better than it was 10 plus, 15 plus years ago. But nonetheless, we have to interview differently, looking at some of the traditional credentials of what would deem it acceptable performance. Could be a Bachelor of Science, could be a ISIT, or even these days a cybersecurity type of degree. That's a great baseline, but still employers want to know, what can you do for me tomorrow if I hire you today, right? And that's a really powerful question. So it's, as Jimmy was saying, it's a marriage. I think if I'm the person looking for a job, I have to understand that conversation, where I fit and how I can answer that question. If I'm the employer, I have to understand, may not be the purple unicorn or the purple squirrel or the unicorn, the absolute perfect fit, but drive, grit, the things that also kind of identify certain determination, right? I can hire somebody who has an exceptional drive and interest and is curious if they meet the minimum levels. And if I want them to be exceptional in a particular job role, I need to know what those competencies are. And then I need to either train, coach, educate, and then develop against those competencies. In the pharmaceutical world, we call it time to peak performance. The data tracking is so good. When you identify a sales rep coming in, they take a training program, you can almost on a bell curve show how much money that person would be selling within 18 months.
Awesome.
And I find that to be a powerful statement, because we put a lot of money in the sales training development for obvious reasons.
Yep.
We kind of have to take the same focus to the cybersecurity workforce as well. Is there enough money being put in the cybersecurity training, education, and coaching? Maybe. I'll leave that as an open question. Are we doing enough as employers to coach people, which increases retention, increases job satisfaction, ultimately increases the overall marriage, as Jimmy was saying, between that person looking for the job, the employer looking for the talent. Here's the missing part. It's the bridge between. That's probably one of our conversations today. I'm an exceptional talent. That's an exceptional job, but I'm missing this one little thing, right? And sometimes people get turned away because of that one little thing, because you're looking for the absolute perfect match. When if you just fix that one little thing, you have the absolute best employee in the world. So sometimes the solve isn't that big and that complex, but if we look at small ways to improve that bridging between the employee and the employer relationship, I think that's a big win.
Thank you. Fantastic insight. I'm going to come to James, but before I do that, James, because you've been in the middle of this, and Brian was talking about things have changed. So I want to get your perspective, how much things have changed or have not changed. But you kept mentioning Purple Score, and I'm looking at the Purple Score, and that's Habibe. Habibe, you have gone through this. So a lot of stuff that Brian was talking about, I think our topics that you and I have touched on, like training and how people are not getting through some of the filters perhaps put by HR, whether it's D&I, DI driven, or other requirements. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is a twofold. So it's a twofold problem from my perspective. So first of all, I don't think on the topic we're speaking today, I don't think all the decision-making, people who are in decision-making seats have the knowledge about the shortage in cybersecurity talent. So to the point that when I talk, in a regular conversation that I have like day to day, with peers, with management, with people in the seats, decision-making seats, often I get questioned, where you get your data from, where this 4 million comes from. So I think one major gap is, first of all, getting people in the decision-making seats understand that the gap is real, and we need to do the checks and balances on when we open a rec and we talk about bringing the talents to the mix. Are we really are we setting the right expectation for in terms of job description, in terms of when it comes to making an offer? Is that really aligned with the person's background and ambition? Where they're going to go? Are they so it's not just getting them to the mix, but retaining them as well. Are we, just like what Brian mentioned, are we investing in training them? So on and so forth. So I guess the major gap is, first, as a cybersecurity community, we have to start educating each other. The gap is real, and we have to acknowledge that by implementing the right mechanism about going to hire, how we go about hiring, right? So and lowering our expectation and leaving some of the training, some of the skills that we require for the training, and have that training or apprenticeship program in our organizations to make sure the workforce are getting the proper training to be well suited for the job that they're assigned.
Yeah, I think I was going to come back to you, but I think what I'm hearing, it seems like there's a lack of balance of expectations. Like the job descriptions are going out there saying I'm looking for an apostle or something like that, but when they're coming in, and James, you're in the thick of it, they won't settle less than God himself, right? Like they want this person to be able to do miracles. By the way, I want you to do this and do AI and do so. How are things in the last 2-3 years at Jim's? You've been in the middle of it. You're dealing with a lot of the cybersecurity. You're the partner, right? That helps try to filter through some of these skills. To some degree, maybe make sure that they have the right technical skills. I think there was a question on the chat, which we're going to delve in a little bit more, but also the soft skills, and then understand the culture of the company. Is this person going to do well in this particular company? Share your insights.
I read the chat. It's an interesting subject that AI built resumes. I have run into quite a few. I've been hiring. I have had many headcounts. I've been hiring in the past couple years, and I had a few instances that AI is not only built the resume, but AI was answering my questions. So in the first 10 minutes, I had a very interesting case. In the first 10 minutes, I got pumped up. I was like, I'm going to hire this person. I don't even need to talk to him anymore. And the next question, I caught him off by surprise. I asked a question, very deep technical question that required critical thinking. And I realized, every single question was answered by typing into AI. I don't know how it was being built on the candidate computer, that as soon as I asked the question, that person was able to type in quickly. He was a fast typer. So we have to be aware of those situations that right now ChatGPT is available and we can answer the question right away. So, but how do we really evaluate the expertise of the candidates? It's a real problem. So at some point it would be machine against machine. So I hope when AI answers the question, the AI gets to interview as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Habiba. Let me go to James. I think, let's get your perspective. You're sitting right in the middle.
Thanks, Tony. There's a lot of ways to dissect this and tackle the problem. I think, as Jimmy was talking about, it's how do we open the floodgates from at an educational level for people to come into the space, right? That's its own situation of, we need the new generation of cybersecurity coming into the space. I think cybersecurity has gone through ebbs and flows of being really sexy and being a little bit mundane, right? So it depends. I think right now we're entering in, to me, for lack of a better word, a very sexy era of cybersecurity. Fraud is going to be rampant, video and voice fraud, right? As well as many other layers of that. And that's kind of exciting, I think, for anybody new into this space, because it's, how do you stop the bad guys? Not at a personal level, right? We're now going to get very personal. It is no longer companies stealing from companies. That's always that way. But bad guys stealing from and representing individuals. And that's going to get very interesting. So I believe that there should be hopefully, as this gets promoted more and more and media talks about it, it gets interesting for people to come into the space. But the people within the space itself, I think the biggest error, I think, is at the hiring manager level, if you want my honest opinion. I think hiring managers have, as you say, they want the purple unicorn. And the purple unicorn exists, but it's going to take you 6 months to find, and highly labor intensive, right? We get pulled in to find those purple unicorn. It is many, many man hours. AI is not going to solve that problem, at least not for the next 3 to 5 years.
And do they stick around, James? Once you hire this purple union, do you see unicorns? Do you see them sticking around, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, a month or two back, I was talking to Nick Degnon, who's the head of worldwide sales for Exonius. He doesn't like people from cybersecurity. He prefers people that are excited to get in the space, that are hungry. Those are the guys. Now, sales is a different animal. Salespeople right now are jumping regularly, 1 to 2 years. So he gets people from outside that are hungry, that are driven to be in cybersecurity, and they stick. That's what he's finding, right? I remember I was talking to a gentleman named TJ Cooley, who's also head of sales for StackRox before they were bought. And he said the same thing. He does not hire people from cybersecurity in general. Hires people outside the space. He can teach. Realize everybody in this space has knowledge in cybersecurity. Everyone here is an expert in cybersecurity. That's probably a little bit easier to teach than sales skills, right? Now, on a technical level, for example, engineers, most engineers do not have to have cybersecurity. It is a nice benefit. But what you see in job descriptions is these, 7 years of SaaS cybersecurity or 7 years of cloud experience, blah, 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 within cybersecurity. But yet cloud, SaaS, all these things are adjacent spaces that can easily be transferable. You don't need generally engineers that have it. Obviously, security analysts and these things, very highly technical, anybody in a SOC and that kind of stuff. There's certain things that you have to have cybersecurity experience. There's no way out of that. You can't teach somebody to do their job when they don't have it. But I think what hiring managers, honestly, Tony, I think what happens is twofold. One, they set themselves high expectations, which is fine. You should have high expectations. But as you said, there needs to be an awareness passed down of last year alone, I think there was 650,000 added jobs in cybersecurity. And this was the worst year we've had in over a decade in recruiting. Last year was abysmal.
Interesting. Unpack that for me. How is that possible, right? I mean, we have this gap. You have 650,000. Is it that you just gave up, or what's going on, man? I mean, are you slacking?
I'd say so many people. It's interesting. HR got obliterated. I remember I was talking to the head of TA at Palo Alto. His team went from 300 to 180. They lost 40% of that workforce.
Is that because they hired AI?
No, I think what they did was they had obviously attrition, and I don't know exactly in Palo Alto, but a lot of people had attrition and didn't replace their attrition. But they did have new hires, so it was actually kind of interesting. So I think the 600,000, 650,000 may be slightly misleading because there was probably more than that were let go.
Interesting,
in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, just to go back to it, I think at a hiring manager level, I hate to say it, but I think expectations need to be realistic. And I think the amount of labor involved from a hiring manager perspective is high.
Very good point. I think that goes back to that marriage conversation that Jimmy started, and level setting and readjusting our expectations. But you touched on Palo Alto. We initially were talking about, the cybersecurity workforce and skill-based training and whatnot. I wanted to go to Java. Java, you've been, a practitioner, and you moved on the vendor side. I think I followed your suit a few years after that. But how is this affecting on the vendor side? I mean, you've been on, roles where operationally involved, trying to scale up companies. How is that going on the other side of the fence?
Yeah, Yeah, it's a very important thing to look at, right? When we talk cybersecurity workforce, I think there's a lot of focus on practitioners, which is where I started. I mean, back in the 90s, that's where I started. I started as a practitioner in the 90s. But out of the 25 years, close to 20 years, a little over 20 years, I've spent it on the vendor side in product roles, in engineering roles, customer success roles, sales, pre-sales, channel sales, corporate leadership, all of that, right? So I think it's important to look at that because that paves a way for folks that do want to make that transition. Hey, maybe they started as a practitioner and they feel my heart is somewhere else, and I want to take the experience that I've gained as a practitioner. It can be cybersecurity practitioner, it can be general tech practitioner, and hey, I want to move to a product role. I want to go build products in engineering, or I want to go launch some products, pricing, licensing, market fit, product requirements, all of that. I want to go do that. But also very interesting is some of the go-to-market roles, the customer-facing roles, where there's plenty of opportunities for folks that are new coming into the industry, graduates that are coming out, or maybe 1-2 years of experience. Some classic roles that will fit them really well on the vendor side. And guess what? The vendor side, we're going through the same challenges as the practitioner side is going through. There's definitely a gap, a skill set gap that we're seeing. But also the vendor side has new requirements. Forget AI, let's park AI for a minute, but even the last 10 years with cloud security, with security operations evolving, with threat intelligence, threat hunting, there are plenty of vendors that have come out in that space. So there is a skill set gap. But if you're coming out of college, or if you want to transition, maybe you're a veteran, you want to transition into cybersecurity. Yes, the practitioner path was kind of the traditional path, but where we're seeing plenty of opportunities is on the go-to-market side. Sales engineers, systems engineers, a lot of times that could be a good path. Maybe you've had a couple of years of experience as a practitioner, or maybe you trained, you got trained, and you want to move into cybersecurity, and SE is a great path for you to start. The same thing, if you have a flair towards selling, SDRs, BDRs, sales development reps, business development reps, with that experience, with that 2-3 years of practitioner background, with that 2-3 years of training, if you have, again, a flair for selling, you want drive growth for a vendor that you want to be part of, that could be a great place for you to start. So I am biased in the sense, try different functions, experience, go through that experience. And in some ways, I was blessed to have that experience, and my mentors, people bet on me as I moved from a practitioner to engineering, to product, to customer success, to pre-sales, sales, channel sales, different types of sales roles. But I'm an engineer at heart. So what that means is having that 1-2-3 years of strong training, practitioner experience, or something that's rooted in that really bodes well. But the key is you just focus on the vendor side as well. Maybe you don't know at this point, but there might be a systems engineer or maybe an SDR, BDR role that you might actually like and continue to scale, or maybe something really close to a practitioner role. Where I made the switch was from a practitioner to product engineering, where you're taking that experience and you're helping build a product. And guess what? You walked a mile or two in your customer's shoes. And you're not just going out there building a product without having an idea, or selling a product without having any clue what your customers are going through. And that goes a long way.
I think there's some hidden gems. I don't know if everybody got it, but this is what I heard underneath. Very, very insightful, comment that you made. I think that two things. One, skills will get you in, right? If you're a practitioner, you have that. You work with a curator or whatever it is, you may be able to go and work for that vendor. If you have the passion for, tapping into something else, we all have blind spots. But I think what you also said is, once you got in, find your talents. Your talents will want to make you stay, right? Skills will get you in, and your talents will make you want to stay in the career and grow you. Like many of us may be problem solvers, but at least for me, it was me listening to other people telling me a blind spot I had, right? And that is, I thought I was an engineer. I was a very good solution, guy looking for problems, and I was the Harvey Keitel, finding that, but I wasn't very happy, right? And when I moved over, I started kind of finding for people are telling me, Tony, you'd be great in BD. What is BD, right? Oh, you'd be great in technical marketing. How do I start this? How do I go through this career? Finding mentorships that help you nurture that talent would be the right thing. Jimmy,
that is exactly what I was gonna say, Tony, is that one of the things that is essential that I've seen for a lot of people in successful positions is either finding a mentor or finding a champion, somebody within the company or somebody outside the company who is looking at your career growth and saying, here's a good move for you. I understand how you are, here's a good move. Because one of the things that happens is, yes, you can go to all these colleges, you can go to all these things, you can learn this skill set, but that skill set may not necessarily be in your wheelhouse. And once you find stuff that is in your wheelhouse, that's when the growth happens, and you find a career instead of you finding a job.
Awesome. Well, we touched on some of the root causes. Why are we where we are with this talent shortage? We touched about unrealistic expectations, and also I guess we alluded to the fact that employees should make sure that they have skills up to date that are marketable. I think Brian, you touched on it, and Jimmy, you as well, right? Make sure that you have something to offer, right? It's not what the company can do for you is what you can do for the company. I think somebody is going to, call me up on it. But I think that there's a couple other topics that I wanted to kind of share and see maybe we can, double click on those. One is that, the pool of cybersecurity talent lacks diversity. I mean, we certainly have a lot of diversity on this panel, but I know that's a topic of interest. I think the ISC score was saying that 25% of cybersecurity workforce around the world is female, which is a good number, better than what it was before, and also indicated that teams are becoming increasingly more diverse. So we're moving the right direction. Yet 70% of cybersecurity workforce workers are 60 and older and white. 13% are white women, 15 are non-white men, and 2% are non-white women.
Wait, sorry, Tony, I want to clarify. 60% is over 60 years old?
70% of cybersecurity workers are 60 and older and are white. I don't know if I buy this, but there's another point that causes this cybersecurity shortage, which I believe is cybersecurity experts are leaving the profession, right? We have a problem backfilling, which is why the points about training and mentorship, and we're going to touch a little bit more about apprenticeship programs versus just internship programs are very, very important. But what are your thoughts about this lack of diversity? Are we solving for the problem? I think once we solve one problem, we have to be careful because, these metrics can be abused, right? In some ways, and can become these filters that people with the great skills may not be able to get through that, right? Because there's AI's filtering or whatever that is. Let's maybe spend a few minutes talk about this diversity, equity, inclusion type stuff. Are we on the right track? Is it working? Or what are your thoughts? Anyway.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I don't know if we're supposed to raise our hand or not.
No, you don't. But
what's really interesting is just being in. I'm one of those people getting to that point, right? And when I started in this industry, it looked a certain way. The way that this industry looks now to me is just radically different. But we need to do more, right? We all agree on that. I always just take the position that cybersecurity is for everybody. You don't have to be an analyst. You don't have to be a pen tester. You don't have to have like this specific skill. If you're a project manager, you can have cybersecurity skills. If you're a frontline salesperson at a clothing store, you might be a good fit for cybersecurity. Now, that might sound a little outlandish, but it's more about understanding your customer, understanding their needs, understanding your environment. And from the standpoint of let's say somebody who works on a sales floor at the Gap. Well, part of that training that you get there as a salesperson is how to identify loss mitigation. Somebody comes in with a big bag, you calm one of your friends and you start doing these roundabouts and they train you on these things. So now physical security. You can't have cybersecurity without physical security. So take that same concept and apply it to a gate or a door or some type of a badged, entry and exit point. So cybersecurity really is for everybody. And there's organizations out there that I've been really impressed with. One in particular within the DEIA domains is NPower. I think about 6 locations now across the US. They are finding people who think that they would never be able to be in cybersecurity, putting them through these intensive boot camps. And this is an echo I hear throughout this group, not just training, mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
And mentorship is the dialogue. And dialogue is the soft skill that takes you, Tony, I think you said, rather than just being a skill or maybe just being a job, you can now build a career. You can't do that without being able to have this human interaction, right? We can be very, very powerful from a skill set, but we have to be able to level that up. I think one of the best skills in the world that anyone can learn, regardless of what you do, join Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
Learn public speaking. If you can get over that flutter and that fear of just having a voice at any point, that's the start. And then work on your skills, but also work on the soft skills side. So, DEI is really anybody who has the interest, determination, and drive, the grit to want to better themselves. But it doesn't have to be just cyber. That's any career, any job in the world, right? We just call it cybersecurity. That's where we're at right now.
Okay.
But DEI, we need to reach out to community colleges. There's an organization down in Stafford, Virginia, CyberBytes Foundation. They do outreach to the K-12 systems. And they have particular NIST programs and grants, and they're helping kids exit college, learn drone skills, learn swarming skills. They do these summer camps. It's about making it findable, accessible, searchable, and then most importantly, like, hey, I can do this. Make it something that you can actually do, you can actually access, and we can get a lot more people into this domain.
Awesome. So you think we're in the right direction, Journal, that cybersecurity for everybody is open. Come on in. Just make sure that you want to do it. I'll add a flair as to who can come in. I often say, cybersecurity has been a very thankless job. We use the word sexy, du jour, or whatever you want to use it. But it's still very thankless in many ways, right? I would say that what I've seen is I tell people, make sure you really want to come in. We want you. If you have those skill sets, if you work at a circus, if you're a firefighter, if you have been a kindergarten teacher, right? There's a lot of skills you can bring in transferable. And I think our good friend Keon Williams, Jimmy, right, has been doing that, right? I mean, he's been finding those, transitional, right? People who are burned out, maybe during COVID, you're burned out in healthcare and you don't want to deal with blood and contagions and whatnot, but you've done triage. So, that could be, and you can get trained and come in to do, level 1 analyst work, right? If you've done pathology, that may be doing threat hunting. But I think both you and Jimmy wanted to comment. So maybe go to you, Jimmy, and then back to James.
So I want to readdress the point about DEI because of Tony and Habiba. You've been to one of my Day in the Life that I used to do at Netflix, and I would invite, maybe 10 to 11 educational institutions. It would be in power of community colleges, universities, things of that nature. And the distinct thing that I discovered by doing that over time is that I could tell the students what schools the students went to just by the way they answered a question.
Wow.
And so that made me think, like, yes, you may be hiring this Black woman from Stanford, but she's still going to give you a Stanford answer. You can be doing the same thing for MIT or the same thing for a junior college. So for me, the diversity is even more than just the color of your skin or if you're male or female. It's also how diverse is your thought. And so, because one of the things that many people or not many people are not talking about of AI is all about attention. And so AI needs a certain level of data to get this attention. Well, what AI won't get a lot of attention from is the minority people. And so they will be the ones who can either trick the AI or who get left behind by the AI. So So that, to me, that's where diversity and inclusion comes from.
I think you're talking about the social determinants of X, right? This is for health and education. I think this is access, right? If you're in a community college, right? If you're this, you're not going to have the same access as Stanford. And even if you're looking for internships, right? Even in Bay Area, everybody is here. Not everybody is looking at the community colleges. This is why you and I are working very much closely with the Bay Area Community Colleges and ICT, and they're trying to build those, internship programs and also apprenticeship programs. And there's a culture that needs to be built in the hiring side, that hiring for apprenticeship is very, very different. You have to put some investment, right? To the point that Habibe and Brian made earlier. As you bring them in, it's just the beginning of that journey, right? We have this talent gap. And that's why I ask you, James, if you bring these purple squares, if they stick around, right? If you're not investing, if they don't feel that they're growing, we're just putting a patch, right? We're not really solving the problem. You're not building the workforce of the future. I'll pause there. Back to you, Java. You raise your hand, and I haven't forgotten about you, James.
Yeah, no, the thing I want to say is first, kudos, Jimmy, for everything that you're doing, right? I've known your work, Jimmy, for local community colleges and making sure that that everybody gets a fair shot, right? And the work that you're doing is awesome, Jimmy, in that front. But what I want to, bring to the attention here to the audience is, in addition to or related to DEI, is what we are seeing is, we need to focus more on mental health for cybersecurity professionals, right? And it's very important from a DEI point of view, so that folks that are challenged, right? Challenged because of their socioeconomic background, maybe they've got some health issues. We collectively as an industry, we got to do more with the focus on mental health because it's a highly stressful industry. The job is stressful, period, right? And what we've seen in the last couple of years is with new regulations coming out, the reporting requirements that went out recently. You all, followed the lawsuits, with DOJ charging, the CISO, former CISO of Uber, SEC charges on SolarWinds, things like that, right? We'll not talk about those things specifically. That's for a different topic. But what I'm trying to bring here is all of these, they add stress. And there's definitely an impact on mental health, because at the end of the day, it's not like an IT system failing. It's not like a database failing. You're talking about cybersecurity, and the repercussions can be big. So part of what we should be doing as a DEI effort is making sure that we're supporting our employees, we're supporting our team members, we're focused on their mental health. And that has to come all the way from very early stages. And I'm sure we've all seen this throughout our careers. So I want to really call that out, especially as we're looking at diversity, inclusion, that aspect of focus on mental health, giving importance, having a support structure. That's going to be super important as we go into the future.
I think it's a great point, Java. I mean, no wonder a lot of people from the military come to cyber, because they're used to that. You're constantly under attack. There's a lot of expectations of you, so they have those skill sets innate. But a lot of people come in here, and that was my comment. Like, you better have worked in a circus or in a heightened environment, right, where you need to pay attention and always noise and everything's happening, and you have a lot of responsibility, whether it's managing the kids, whether it's the firefighter or the first responders or whatever that is. But I think your point is very valid, right? The folks that are trying to solve for this asymmetric warfare, right? I mean, just to give some color, we all know this, we've heard of it, right? We have to be right 100% of the time. The bad guys have to be right one time. There's a lot of repercussions, governance, privacy, a lot of stuff on top of it. Throw in D&I, throw everything else in there. So it's very, very important to make sure that we have a culture of embracing enablement and empowerment that happens, right? And I think that realizing that the bad guys, right, the adversaries, are making a lot more money and a lot more profitable than we are, right? I think aggregate cybersecurity market is somewhere north of 200 billion, right? 215, depending what week you look at it. I think, Java, you have those numbers more attuned, given that you work in private equity these days. But the last numbers I looked at, last year, it was like $6 trillion unprofitably for the hackers economy. I think it's now closing to $8 trillion. That makes them the third largest economy in the world and bigger than the entire cartel industry. So to your point, there's a lot riding on all cybersecurity team with the talent shortage and with all the attack surface expanding, right? So I think that's a very, very important point, right? That mental health, and mindfulness is very important for us to consider. I don't know, it's a one person's job, but I think it's a cultural shift that we need to do. James, I promised I would come back to you, so you had some comments to make.
Yeah, one of the things I just want to go back to it a little bit. Jimmy brought it up, which is mentorship and having a champion. So just anybody watching this, 70 to 85% of all recruiting globally is done through a personal network. And that is somebody mentoring you, championing you. So that network, anytime somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm looking for a job, my first reaction is, have you reached out to your network, right? Reach out to everybody you know and let them know, because there's a ton of people you actually do know. And if you're trying to get into this space, I mean, cybersecurity is massive, right? It is a big, big space, and it's growing exponentially. I mean, just look at RSA, and for the last few years, it's crazy. Anyway, so just to go back to that is, if somebody wants to get into cybersecurity, or if somebody's hiring, look at their own network beyond cybersecurity. That's one thing. DEI is something we get asked for all the time, diversity. So cybersecurity is changed dramatically. And I think start of that change was John Thompson, the CEO of Symantec, right? I think he kind of initiated that change in cybersecurity. And if you look at the CEOs of Palo Alto Networks, of Fortinet, of Elastic, we have ethnicity down pretty well compared to where we were. Don't get me wrong. I think we have a long way to go, but it is changing, and it is changing from people like Jimmy. I mean, look at this panel alone. I don't think you were trying to do it in a way that it was just through your own network, and these are the people that I like and all that. But we have quite a diverse candidate. I mean, talking pool right here, and that's fantastic. I think that will continue. I think we are raising awareness, and we get asked for every single job search we get. Can you please also include diverse candidates? And we do a great job of that. I think we're getting better. It's becoming more aware. We're a long way to go, but I want to acknowledge the good that's being done over the last decade, because it has been much better. We're nowhere near where we need to go. And I'd say more than anything, probably female and African Americans, probably you say 25% are in cybersecurity, and it's true. And I think if you look at where they are in cybersecurity, it is your traditional technology areas, which unfortunately is, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's just an area that they happen, there's more of it, which is HR, marketing, quite a lot of sales actually, et cetera. But in technology, I mean, that's driven at the university level, is driven at the marketing level to attract those types of individuals.
Awesome. So I wanted to sum it up. So if you're looking for a career change or network, tap into your network, seek mentorship. And I think the other point that was validated by Jimmy as well is that the diversity is not just about ethnicity, is your social circle that you're growing up, right? I think one of the key things, we often talk about IQ and EQ. And I think for me, one of the key things that I would look in for a team in this space that is highly demanding, it's actually another acronym, which is AQ, right? It's your adversity quotient. It's your grit. So obviously, if you are raised in an environment that, you didn't have the means for your parents to pay you for you to go to Stanford or whatnot, and you're working and you're having a single mom or single dad or just, struggling, going through that, your passion is driving it. Certainly, if you come on board, I know that you're not going to bend when things get tough, right? I think that there's some things developed. So having that grit, to your point, Jimmy, I think tapping into community colleges with, people go in there because that's what they can afford. And they're trying to go through that adversity it builds up that character that we need in our teams because they now can withstand a little bit more. I know we're getting there.
That's a great point.
Thank you. And thank you all. I think that I wanted to kind of touch point on some of the things. So we talked about, inclusivity in depth, right? We talked about retention and development. I think we can double click, but I think it's pretty clear, right? Just don't bring resumes and names and at your team. Make sure if you bring them in, they're the right fit and invest in them. And you may want to bring in from other careers, right? There's career transitioning, there's communities that help with that. And certainly that's one of the missions at Tortora Brayda. We want to partner up. We're always looking for other folks that come in. So together, right, through that partnership, we want to be able to solve this talent gap, right? And I think that retention development is a big part of it. And I think one topic that we brushed over, but I wanted to double click on it, and maybe back to you, Habibe, is I know you're very passionate about this, is this topic of skill-based hiring, right? So you are on the flip side of what Jawahar was talking about. Jawahar mentioned that, rightly so, many of the folks coming in, they may come in from a practitioner to an SC role because they have the technical background, and they may have some signals for wanting to do sales. And that's something that, they can pick it up or not, and they quickly figure it out. You're on the flip side. You're on the customer success. And on the customer success, if somebody's been doing customer success and they have the EQ, that's great. But in previous conversations, you mentioned that you wanted to make sure there's more scrutiny on the skill-based hiring, that you're very big component on the technical skills to be there. So maybe double click on that for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. This is I think customer success and SE is a completely different animal in terms of talent acquisition. I have been facing a lot of challenges in this space, because the reason I'm saying this is not, you have to have a little bit in order to support your customers effectively. You need to have that advisor skill, and in order to advise customer on something as important as cybersecurity, because you're giving advice on something that has to do with the risk of organization, how to manage the risk posture, so on and so forth, because every single bit of this vulnerability that we're talking to the customer plays a huge role in the overall risk, right? So on the flip side of the coin, you have to hire people who come from cybersecurity background, who actually have experience in different, being a well-rounded person coming to the mix, having not only IQ, but also EQ, or if not, what is a program to build these people up to be able to, or build their skill up? Do we have a very solid, comprehensive program in place that we're going to go after just, focusing on diversity and inclusion? Or do we really have to, as a hiring manager, do I have to focus on being selfish and bringing someone to the mix who's going to, help my customers to be successful with the product, with the advice that we're giving them? So it's been really, really challenging for me to be able to find that, the balance between the IQ and EQ, reading between the lines, whether customer is, when we talk to different level at customer enterprise, customer level environment, are the practitioner connected to, is it a disconnect on the customer side, reading between the lines and being able to get the customer successful? And do they have the right skill to come out and from the usage, from utilization of the product to come out and start giving customers some advice or not? So for certain roles, I think we cannot, not one size fit all. For practitioner side, definitely we can bring people from adjacent industries and make sure we train them. We have the checks and balances, making sure the compensation is aligned with the level of expertise to grow them based on the ambition and based on where they see themselves in the 5 years. But for customer success and SE, I think you have to have a thick skin, the AQ that you were talking about, Tony. You have to have the grit, and making sure you're bringing people and assessing them at the interview to ensure they're actually not going to quit after 1 year of investing in them. So it's been an extremely difficult challenge for me to solve. So I don't know if Brian, Java, you guys have different experience in that regard, but it's been extremely difficult for me. You're on mute, Tony.
Thank you. I was saying, and you've been on both sides, right? You yourself came from a, very adjacent, like, IT portfolio management. You definitely had the background in products, but you had that passion for cybersecurity, and you've gone through this path, right? So you're a epitome of a good example of this, that you really wanted it. You reached out to your network, and you've gone through it. You've gone through, mentioned 2 different companies. So I appreciate your perspectives as a 360. You've gone through the hiring process. Have you seen a change? Are we on the right track? I mean,
So it's been quite a tortuous path for me, navigating this male-dominated world. As you mentioned, 2% of the workforce in cybersecurity is women of color. So I was sitting here thinking, wow, I'm one of those 2%. So that's been, you can imagine the number of turns and twists I had to go through to get to where I am. And it still is a challenge. It's extremely difficult to be able to be part of the, equally be included. Men around me, I have surrounded myself with people who support me. But it's still, I have to go back, and I have learned over years that I have to go back and start, educating and giving awareness that, in this and that meeting, or in this or that forum, I haven't been equally included. So the change, though, it is not much about the change. It's about the people who come from background like my background. Are they really willing to invest in themselves? And do we have the people with the grit that, I think I had to get me here? You see a lot of technical people. They would love to stay technical. They see a lot of people, project management and purely soft skill. They want to still soft skill. And if you have that chip on your shoulder, you don't want to really start merging this IQ and EQ and grow yourself on a day-to-day basis to get to where certain roles in cybersecurity needs. There continues to be a shortage. It's not just on the hiring side who's not going after the talent or diversity. I think it's a problem with most of our candidates having the chip on the shoulder. They don't want to really, start growing to pull their strength up and going to the next level.
I think that you really recognize your authenticity and genuine feedback. I think a lot of folks listening, they can probably relate to what you just said. So I want to acknowledge that. Really appreciate it. I wanted to, before we jump into, so where do we go from here, folks? Are there any other topics on the problem space that we're talking about this, before we start rethinking, how do we go about solving this problem? Are there any topics that we haven't covered? We touched on a lot of different topics. Just want to open it up if there's any, burning thoughts that you guys want to share before we jump into that.
Yes. One is AI is not the enemy, or it's not even a friend. It's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Like with any tool, is how we use it. And then the other is when one of the questions from the audience was, should they teach specific tools in school? And my answer would be no. They shouldn't teach tools. They should teach concepts, because as languages change, as products change, you shouldn't need to be an expert at every new product that comes out. You should be an expert at the desired outcome. We need to block X using Y over the network. And what is the goal of the tool? Oh, the goal of the tool is to keep our secret safe in this location, not to be the best, Splunk person, which Splunk is an amazing product, but, because as you go from different job to different job, and I've worked in Linux environments, Microsoft environments, Apple environments, using many tools, the one thing that stays the same is what is the objective of the security practitioner or the security salesperson? And that's to sell to somebody or to protect the system, and not to be the best at that tool.
You guys know me, I come up with my crazy analogies, so I'm going to give you one. So what I heard you say is, look, Home Depot is a great place. You can go to aisle 3 to aisle 4 to aisle 5, and you always buy these different tools, different colors, and different drills and whatnot. And there's always a new tool like RotoZip, and you learn that. But when you go there, and the project you do is not about the tools you use, but about how good of a carpenter or tile maker you are, right? So I think, and the folks in the orange vests, let's call them, or whoever moves this, right? They come up with acronyms, and NCAP, which is now 5 acronyms plus, right? They are necessary in our industry, and they have their magic quadrants, and we abide by them. But I think it's, I remember talking to practitioners say, what are your challenges, right? And I would hear, well, I have a UEBA project. I'm like, I'm sorry, what is a UEBA project? It's like you're having a Black & Decker drill project, right? I mean, what is it that you're trying to get? What's the outcome? Are you trying to upgrade your bathroom? Are you creating a new entertainment center? Are you, kind of redoing your deck, right? But that's been how people are programmed, right? And I think that this conversation about tools and, how does this tool fit into this aisle? And then as soon as you go to this aisle, and then the guys in the orange, they shift you to this aisle 5 and aisle 6. You go through that, not knowing why you went there. Maybe you went to get an epoxy because your boss or your CFO, which is your partner at home, and is expecting you to finish this, bathroom project. And you go there and you get looking about these tools, and you get, next new shining tools, and it's bundled, and you buy those things, and you're like, oh, look, I have this tool, I have this. And they come back and it says, when is the bathroom project going to get done? And then you realize, holy crap, I forgot the epoxy because I talked to the guy in orange vest and he sent me to aisle 7, because of this next new shiny tool. So be very careful of that. I think your point is very, very valid, right? Don't get enamored with the tools. I think that's where, on-the-job trainings that Javier was mentioning, and I think so did Brian. And I think also apprenticeships would be great, right? There are apprenticeship programs. You can go expose yourselves, and, there are vendor training and certifications you can do. But what I heard is don't get pigeonholed about learning every type of drill or everything it is. You need to generally have the skill sets that is required. What do I need to do to create those outcomes? That's, I think, a very good point, Jimmy. Any other thoughts?
I would like to add to what Jimmy said. So, Jimmy, I agree that, we shouldn't teach tools, but at the same time, coming from the Cisco Academy background, I think Cisco put together some program to teach the network concept in every single network academy, community college, right? But the underlying concept that they were teaching was starting from layer 1 networking all the way to layer 7, and then how do you apply it with Cisco devices, right? So regardless of Cisco devices, that the amount that I personally learned in that program, if I put, all 6-7 years of going to, universities for degrees, and that 4 years of 3-4 years of going to community colleges, learning practical hands-on skills for learning networking, I think I learned a lot more being practically, hands-on experience with devices and with the tools. So I could apply that skill everywhere that I go with networking, including, troubleshooting from a small environment that I get stuck, if my PC doesn't get connected to the internet, or now with the IoT devices all over. So I owe it to that Cisco Academy. So I think the comprehensive program, even if it starts with a tool, right? If an organization with a product comes in and says, I'm going to be that Cisco for cybersecurity, that would put people like a structure. People like to go, especially young people, like to see there is a series of certification like CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, and it's going to get you to level job, between 100 to 120K. If you get the level 1, if you get to graduate level 10, you're going to get to, somewhere like C-level. That comprehensive program that teaches the content, that's just the concepts of cybersecurity, is missing. People just throw themselves at a job and they're hoping to be able to navigate and get somewhere, and wherever that job throws them, they're going to go there. So I think it's just like, since Tony likes analogy, I'm going to use analogy here. So it's just like any plant, if you direct the plant, it's going to go to the direction that you want to. If not, it's going to organically grow in any direction, and we don't know where we're going. So many people come to me, they don't even know about, I didn't know up to a couple of years ago, what are some of the certifications exist in cybersecurity? Where should I go to learn them? Or some of these, some of these organizations or nonprofit organizations like the CISO of Gilead has put a very nice program together that I hired from. How many people are aware of that program? They're just in silos, that a very small community are aware of that program. So how do we start putting a little bit of a structure around learning and training, and the expectation that each level is going to get you to? I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. I think you both make a good point. I don't think that it's mutually exclusive. Jimmy is not saying that don't do the training. Just say don't get focused on just the one tool training. The tool training you did, it helps you do the problem solving, right? I think that stick with you, and I think your point is very valid. It is a structured training, and I think it goes back to the investment that we need to do with the folks that we bring on board, and that empowerment that is there, right? I think the analogy you gave is very good one, because we need to take an active investment in the talent that we bring, right? Where they're going in and where they're going to go, right? It's on us to bring this talent in. Right? Otherwise, we're not solving the 60 plus and diminishing, skill set that we have, right? The retirees, right? So I think we all have to take more of an active participation in that. Your point, actually, I had invited Krishna to be here. I think he's done some amazing work, and I think Jimmy, you know that as well. So I think we'll continue this. This is just the beginning, right? Let's figure out where we are. And with that said, what I wanted to focus on in the last section is, folks, where do we go from here, right? So we talk about all the challenges and problems and whatnot. What are the key trends that we foresee, impacting? What do we should watch out? And then, how do we partner, right, James? I mean, how do we partner with recruiters? There's a lot of posers, right, and there's a lot of practitioners with AI, versus AI happening right now. And then there's good ones, they're partners like you. I look at you as a partner, in helping us, right, do a better qualification. Otherwise, we're paying a lot of, placement fees for not a whole lot of value, right? So I know a lot of startups that are trying to disrupt and get rid of recruitments or, talent acquisition people. So there's a mixed feelings around it. I think instead of getting rid of people, we need to reevaluate how we do it. What is everybody's role? But let's start with you. How do you envision that we can work with recruiters such as yourselves? And, how do we build these bridges that we need to be built, right, to solve some of the talents? Let's open it up, and then let's think about, the art of possible, right? How do we go solve this problem?
So I think AI actually is going to assist in the sourcing process, right? Assist screening out resumes, and where some of these resumes are AI created, being able to discern that. I think they'll probably be pretty good at that. However, I mean, the truth is, if you get resumes that look somewhat decent, I mean, most likely, if you've been in cybersecurity for any length of time, you're going to know people that know these people. If you look at your LinkedIn connections and that person links in, if you don't know anybody that person doesn't know, sounds like something's a bit odd to me, right? So I think the reality is there's no way around the labor part of this. And I hate to say it because nobody wants to hear it. Everybody's looking for shortcuts. And to give you a reality of what our recruiters go through on any given search, they look at 700 to 1,000 resumes for every single search, 700 to 1,000. Out of those 700 to 1,000, they interview about 50 to 75 people. You're talking a lot of man hours, right? Just a ton of hours that they put into this. And out of that, then they have to, go through that whole process of getting the finalist candidate who then backs out, and then, going through that, right? There's a lot of things that can go all wrong, as we all know, and they all do. There's so many things that can go wrong in this. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think you can replace the amount of time that it takes. This is not an easy thing to do. The internal recruiters actually do a pretty darn good job in general, but most of them are overloaded. And then so they come to us, as well as executives come to us saying, hey, can you help me find this specific role or roles, because they're highly labor intensive. My recruiter's spending 50% or 60% of their time on that one role. Can you guys please, with your network, help us out? Obviously, we've been doing this for 17 years. We have a massive network. So I think partnering with good agencies is really important, but it costs you money, right? So the question is, do you want to spend the time doing it? And actually, what's interesting to me is I think there are always going to be need for agencies that know the space well. And there's actually just not a lot of them. I can think of one hand with agencies that are somewhat decent in cybersecurity. The rest all say they're in cybersecurity, but they don't. So there's very few agencies that do that. But where we've found hiring managers do an excellent job is when they themselves go into LinkedIn and reach out to people through LinkedIn and through their own network. It sucks because they're tirelessly working on their own job and managing, in a lot of cases, the people they're trying to manage. But this helps bail them out and give them more time. So it's a bit of a catch-22. If they put in more time to it, they're going to get better people. But they don't have the time because they're running 24/7, you know what I mean, to try to catch up. But I think the answer is, one, there are going to be some good AI platforms that offer solid resume screening that then the hiring manager can look to and screen through. I think relying only on your internal recruiting team as a hiring manager is not the only way and best way to do it, because they have so many that they're dealing with. So if I was the hiring manager, I would work with my internal team. I would do everything I could in my power to get my own network and look through LinkedIn and individually reach out to those people. And then I would work with agencies like us, obviously, on those kind of very specific niche roles, executive roles that are urgent, that you don't have the luxury of waiting for. And that's I think the three-pronged approach.
Awesome. I took the notes and we'll review them. Any other thoughts that you guys wanted to add in? Maybe just go.
So for me, one of the things is, as an organization and as private companies, try to find a couple of educational institutions in your area and partner with them, because many, if you are on a security product side, they're willing to take some of your tools and teach them to their students, because they want students to have the best real world experience they can, as long as the schools don't have to pay too much for it, because schools have a limited budget. And the other thing, if you are going to work with a school, understand that it generally takes 6 months to a year from before you can actually get what you're trying to do implemented, because they have a curriculum that they have to work on. So it's not going to be what we're used to in the private industry, where it happens really fast and it gets done fast. We have to take it a little slower and understand the long game instead of the short game when it comes to educational institutions.
So partner is an important thing. I think, there's definitely a lot of, for those of us in Bay Area, a lot of local chapters and institutions that we've been interacting. Happy to help. I think you have a great point, right? I remember Arizona University tried to create a cyber range where people get to, going back to the tooling that we're talking about, is, hey, if you want people to be familiar with your tool, just make your tool available, right? And techniques are available, right? Now, those of us that touch deception, that was a kind of a left field thinking, right? Or we looked at deception to solve the alert fatigue problem, right? Well, that you have to get your head around that, right? That's completely changing the landscape. I think that when you're talking about LinkedIn, I think there's definitely some topics. Sounds like you may be looking at Habiba over her shoulder, because I know she was sharing that she's going and finding some talent herself and then passing it out. But I think Habiba, you're showing some challenges around that, right? So even you find candidates, somehow they're not making it through. What's going on there?
I don't know what you're referring to, but
share with me that you kind of know who you're looking for. You find some potential talent on LinkedIn and you pass it on to your internal recruiters or HR, but somehow they're not getting that.
Yes, that was a challenge, because HR, I guess we need to partner better with HR. And I'm not specifically talking a specific company, or because right now at Armor Code we have a great relationship. But I guess when we have the questions are being formulated, and it is being asked of every candidate, instead of assessing candidate during the interview for the grit and the talent they have, not the skill much. I guess when you interview for talent and strength in certain area, it completely, it takes the organic, the interview takes organically starts developing, from question to go to the next question and dig deeper. But when it's formulated, when hiring is getting formulated by the HR, that you have to go through, certain questions, and or a certain way of people assessing certain candidates is getting dictated to every single person who are assessing certain candidates. Obviously, they're not going to make it to the final round. So it's adding more obstacle. In addition to the shortage, it's adding even more difficulty to get a candidate to the finish line. And when they get to the finish line, again, the discrepancy between, we lowball most of our candidates trying to offer something that's not even, it's not conventional anymore, just because we are offering something for the skills that they're coming in there, where we all agreed that we're going to go after the talent, right? So and we're going to build them up. So this even if you're successfully hire with a low budget, and high and feel like you won and you're successful, the success is going to show itself in the long term. How long we have been able to retain and grow these talents. So one of the things I always take pride of is, as a hiring manager, as a manager, as an executive, is how long I have been able to retain my talents, and when they graduate from my team, where do they go? So if they go to a better job, to a higher level, get hired by the next organization, no one is staying in the same organization more than 3-4 years, right? So this is a river. We brought us together, and then we're going to branch out. So when they branch out, where do they go? Where do they graduate? Is something that I have to go back and look at my performance, or company's performance, or my boss's performance, right? So it is a two-way street, what they have given us, what we have given them. So retaining the talent is another issue that I think we have to pay equal attention to the life cycle of the talent, not just bringing them on board. Did I answer your question, Tony?
No, that and a bag of chips. There was a lot of good information there, and I think that as I'm taking notes, right, the theme that comes up is partnering, right? James mentioned partnering with your external. You talked about partnering with your HR. Enablement, empowerment came up when Brian was talking about, and the game is not just about bring someone. I love the fact that it's a life cycle of the talent, right? And that's a focus. That's a big picture thinking that we need to do. Going back to Jimmy's conversation, it's an outcome that we want to create also, is to bring more talent, into our organization, and enable and empower them, right, to grow. With the analogy you mentioned, right, that tree, right? You need to provide that support, right? These are really important.
I think part of it is, Tony, just to add to it before you move on for me, is partnering with organizations like James. So we have had success when we partner well with external organizations, but again, sometimes we're not allowed as hiring manager to work with external organizations. Unfortunately, puts us under a lot of pressure of thinking, we can do everything, because that's the expertise of these organizations that go out and bring people who they trust, who that they've worked with before. Especially with the prevalence of AI nowadays, we have to rely on external organizations to bring people from, with the background that they know, they network. Their network is huge. So it's going to be. I want to work with people who I trust. I want to work with people who James trusts, right? So I think part of it is, again, not having that chip on our shoulder, thinking we can do everything ourselves. We have to be open to work with external, partner with external organizations.
Fantastic. Jawahar, your thoughts?
Yeah, it goes both ways, right? Both from a candidate point of view as well as from the hiring manager and HR. Building that trust throughout the process is going to be key. And as a candidate, for all the folks in the audience, it's very important to be prescriptive about why you're going after a particular job opportunity. I think that is going to be very, very important, because we like it or not, we definitely did see a contraction in the overall macro economy. I mean, the zero interest rates, that's gone. And obviously valuations have gone down in the last 18 months or so. So it's important for you as a candidate to make sure that you're being prescriptive about building that trust, and you're being prescriptive about why you're interested in something. And it's also true on the other side as well, where hiring managers, be candid, be open, build that trust from pretty much at a very early stage of the engagement process. But the other thing I also wanted to point out is, what Jimmy and Habibe were talking about. Both are equally important in the sense, hey, as you're going through community college or your bachelor's or master's or any of that, your formal education in this field, it's important to get the concepts right. And Jimmy has an absolutely valid point there, because tools change, right? Tools change in 5 years, 10 years, and I think there was a question, and then the question had 3 vendors listed, question from the audience, and 2 of those vendors are in the security analytics SIM space, right? And we've seen that space consolidate, go through so much of consolidation in the last 18 months or so. And even today, there was an announcement of two of those players merging. So to Jimmy's point, tools come, tools go, but the concepts, they stay, they stick with you. You're going to apply that 20 years from now. The point that Habibe made is also very much true, in the sense, to get to some short-term wins, you need to go a little deeper on some of these tools and technologies. I mean, think of the largest pure play cybersecurity companies that are out there by market cap, public companies like the Palo Altos and the CrowdStrikes and the Zscalers and the Checkpoints of the world. You got to make sure that you're employable. And one way to show that to your future employers is getting a little deeper, where hey, they're hiring for a skill set, they're solving for a specific need that they have. And again, in the context of where we are in early 2024, middle of 2024, I need somebody to do SOC operations, and I want them to have experience with these 2 SIM tools. And that's a classic thing that you're going to see. And it's going to go a long way if you have a certification, or if you're trained, or if you have some hands-on exposure in those specific tools. So both of those things are valid, and you got to be you as somebody that's trying to get into this, or maybe you have 2, 3, 5 years of experience and trying to scale to the next level. Make sure you're balancing both, because there are times where you got long-term goals, but you also have to focus on short-term wins, because that's important as well for you to achieve those long-term goals.
Awesome. Folks, we have about a minute. I'm just going to go quickly summarize as we think, how do we move forward? And if there's anything left, we'll add it on. I heard tap into your network, leverage your network, right? Embrace and leverage AI, right? For whether it's sourcing resumes, right? Don't solely rely on your internal team. They can't scale. Partner up. Reach out to good candidates on LinkedIn. Do some passive, hunting, right? Find educational institutions, and teach your tools in there, right? Jimmy, you mentioned that, right? Partner up with your communities. That goes back to the breaking down social determinants of access, let's call it, right? And I think that be patient, working with those educational institutions, right? They don't have all the money, especially working with communities. We're already working with them. Think ahead. What do you want these folks to come out with? And then work with folks like Brian and William, that's Keon Williams, and many other folks, and reach out to us, reach out to the Tortora Brayda Institute with any ideas you have. These things may take 6 to 1 year, but you need to think about the curriculum. They're going to go through it. We need to do it now, right? The vendors need to take a stake, work with the communities, and change the curriculums now if you want to get skills down the road, right? I think partnering with HR is a great, other side of the bridge that Habibe, you mentioned. Make sure that the questions are being formed adequately, right? I think I also heard that please don't play the how low you can go when it comes to offers, right? Let's not play that. Hire for talent, but on the candidate side, invest in your skills, right? Get certification. That echoes that you're passionate about the skills. That echoes that you're committed. And remember, skills will get you in. Talents will let you grow, right? But they're hiring. You heard it from the team. They're hiring for talent, and then we all need to think about not just a candidate, but the life cycle of the talent as we bring them in. Jawahar, you mentioned be prescriptive, build trust, be vulnerable, be transparent, right? That also has to do a lot with the culture of the company. You need to not just say where you come from, you've done this X and Y and whatever your brand is, blue, orange, whatever, but what is your culture, right? Culture matters these days, especially in these microeconomics that change, right? People looking for places that it can work and, that it can have a good life balance. And I think, going back is go deeper, invest in yourself, right? So with that said, I think that's a good prescriptive. I just kind of summarize that. What I've heard as a lot of different points, we talked about reaching into LinkedIn, tap into your network. We talked about trust. We talked about vetting. So here's what I wrote. Perhaps one way to look into this would be maybe use some AI, maybe some things, and think about a trusted, vetted, crowd-based expert sourcing. Maybe that's a path forward. I don't know. But if you could come up with that, right, we can reach out. That could be something that can help the recruiting partners like James, right? Leverage AI in the sourcing side. But yeah, trusted, vetted, maybe crowd-based. We all have networks, right? And I think that's a different way of looking at it. So maybe we can do a follow-up on some of the solutions out there, and then let's bring some of the innovative solutions that they can come up and see, hey, if they can help us. With that said, team, I wanted to thank all of you, Brian, James, Jimmy, Jawahar, and Habibe, for taking time away from your busy days. I think we all share many things in common, but more than anything else, the passion we have for this industry. So thank you for joining us. Please consider joining the Tortora Brayda. You guys have great passion, great great insight. Would love to have you guys be part of the team. And this is one task force. We have many other task force that we do, and it's all done through partnerships and building alliances. So with that said, thank you, and appreciate your participation.
Thank you, everybody. It was great being here.